So, good evening, everybody. This is Stars Tyrant, and we are recording the lore playthrough of Resident Evil Dead Aim. Anyone who listens to the podcasts will know that Dead Aim is a bit of a fan favourite with ourselves there. We pretty much love this game. It's not perfect, it's a bit rough around the edges, but it has it where it counts, and it's an excellent addition to the lore, despite the fact that it is essentially a survivor game. I'll just let the intro play out as we talk about a few things. It was released in North America in June 17, 2003. It was developed by an independent studio called Cavia, who Capcom hired to make it, and the story, however, was written by Flagship, who have done Resident Evil 2, Code Veronica, and a couple of others. Directors are Eri forgive my pronunciation, Shirahama and Takuya Iwasaki. Music that you're listening to is composed by Nobuyoshi Sera, and it's an all-round excellent addition to the lore, which we'll get into it. As we play through the game, it will be a full playthrough. We're going to discuss the story as much as we can, but we'll also look at differences in the Japanese text. I've enabled the subtitles. So what you're going to see is there'll be a big difference between the subtitles and the performed dialogue by the actors, and that's because the subtitles you'll see are pretty much literally translated from the Japanese. So there is a few differences. It's not there's no glaring changes in the actual script. The changes are more left for the files, but we'll discuss them as we go through. This piece of music here is composed by a Japanese rock band called Rise. They did 2 tracks of the game. This is called Gunshot and was used in the trailer. And they also do a track called Heroes Never Die. The Japanese version of the game was called Biohazard Gun Survivor 4 Heroes Never Die. And that track was released exclusively on the Japanese website. And what do they call it? A cappella version of that's used for the save room music. And again, you should hear it. This is the my Dead Aim disc, my PAL disc, running on the PSX2 emulator. PCSX2 emulator, I think it is. So there is a few problems and glitches with the emulation, but hopefully it won't give us too much trouble. I will save regularly in case we do have an unfortunate moment where we get a crash, and there was a few audio issues yesterday which I've tried to iron out. Hopefully they won't plague us too much. So I'll let the cutscenes play out because there isn't many, and then we'll discuss what we can as we go through the game. We love it. Like I say, we love it on the Project Umbrella podcast. It's, for me personally, it's one of the highlights of the series. It gets a bit of an unfair rep, I think, when it's, I think, for a spin-off, quite a bold game. And it was one of the first examples. It came out after Resident Evil 0, but it was one of the first examples for me that showed you could spin off from the series, not include any of the main characters, and still tell a reasonably compelling story and wrap it in a reasonably decent game. I'll be playing without the G-Con 2. It did support it, but I always felt this game played better with the DualShock controller, even though it might be a bit off on the aiming a little bit. So I'll do my very best. I'm not awful at this game, but I do expect to die in a couple of the boss fights because it has been some time. So without further ado, we shall begin. I will let Bruce talk us through the story.
Raccoon City, a Midwestern town in the United States, was destroyed when a substance known as the T-virus leaked throughout the town. However, Umbrella, the corporation developing the virus, refused to abort the project. And once again, the threat of biological terror was thrust upon the world. A large amount of T-virus was stolen 3 days ago. The terrorist group hit an Umbrella lab in France. Yesterday, One of Umbrella's cruisers was hijacked and contaminated with the same virus.
September 21st, 2002.
Why you American spies choose to use such ugly guns is still a mystery to me.
Morpheus. Think that cheap cologne you wearing is going to your head. What do you plan to do with the T-virus?
I'm afraid that's all the playtime we have for today. You die. Now.
So, straight away we're thrown into the action. As you can see from the intro, we were introduced there to Bruce McGivern, played by Raj Ramaya, Fong Ling, who's played by an actress called Claire O'Connor, and that was Morpheus D. Duval, who's the villain, and he's played by an Angus Waycott. Like I said, this is September 21st, 2002, and we were already several days into the storyline in the game, as will unfold. We are on board the Umbrella cruise ship called the Spencer Rain, and straight away we're thrust into the action. The game is, like I say, it's a Survivor sequel. It's one of the Survivor series, the Japanese Gun Survivor series. It does have third-person gameplay, and if you go into the aiming, it goes into a first-person viewpoint. The controls I'll play a lot like a third-person shooter. Actually, if you're used to the dual analog setup, it's actually reasonably intuitive to go through. So that said, I'm not going to promise my shooting is going to be any good whatsoever. What surprises a lot of people is that the game does play a lot like a traditional Resident Evil game. It's very linear in the way that Resident Evil 4 is, and in many ways, a lot of people see this as doing a few things that Resident Evil 4 did before, 2 years before that game came out. So straight away you can already see there's been signs of a struggle. There's plenty of dead bodies everywhere. This is a result of Morpheus's team, which are comprised of a load of militants that he recruited in Africa for his nefarious schemes. I'll just before we carry on, I will say some of the information you'll hear today you might have read before in an absolutely wonderful piece of literature that Bastardo did for Project Umbrella. It's called Theorists Never Die. I'll put a link in the YouTube description when this gets uploaded, and it's well worth a read after you've checked the video out. So it's a reasonably decent sized map. The story basically is Morpheus has decided that as a result of the way he's been treated by Umbrella, which is something we'll go through as we get through the files, has decided to take revenge against not only Umbrella but the world itself being essentially too ugly, because he sees, in a sense, humanity is is an ugly thing, and he is intending to bring beauty upon the world by, in a sense, wanting to establish a kingdom in Africa. He has an attachment to Africa in a little monologue, which we'll see later, and he has stolen 3 T-virus samples from the Paris lab. He did that on September the 18th, 2002. They boarded the Spencer Rain, which is the vessel we're on September 20th, and has killed everybody on board. So this is the first file in the game. It's already unlocked. It's called the Intelligence Operations Manual. The Japanese version, it just simply calls it the Espionage Manual. And this is one of the few files in the game where there's no changes really. It's more or less the same. It's just worded differently. It's good morning, Bruce. This time your target is a former executive of Umbrella named Morpheus. He's stolen the T-virus and hijacked the Umbrella's cruiser. We've just been told to infiltrate the cruiser and report the status immediately to the base of strategic forces. Bruce works for US Stratcom, and you'll notice his attire is very similar to Leon's, but there's still no actual confirmation that Leon ever did work for Stratcom. It's only ever a theory among some fans. So straight away we're into a zombie encounter, and hopefully I will get a much needed critical hit. So we go straight into the combat, and I missed. There we go. So the weak spot, should I say, is just between their eyes and their forehead, just slightly higher. And you already saw a little bit of slowdown there. And I think I must have forgotten to pick the key card up. No, I've gone to the wrong door. I apologise. So a lot of the combat can actually be skipped, and if you're pretty good at dodging, you don't even need to get into a lot of the combat. Handgun ammo is plentiful. You always restock an infinite amount at the save rooms, but you can only ever carry a limited amount. Move and shoot using the L2 button, and like I say, and it's one of the first games to use sort of like a key hit zone, if you like, which is one of the things that Resident Evil 4 was praised on. Now Morpheus, with the 3 T-virus samples, has threatened to fire missile strikes at the US and China unless he is paid $5 billion, and he is given their independent governance till midnight of the 23rd to cough up. So we're an emergency fax from the Paris branch. Straight away you get a little bit more story. Again, and this is another file where there's not really any difference in the Japanese to the English, it's just worded slightly differently. And it just highlights the fact that 3 T-virus samples have been stolen from the Paris lab. The prime suspect is Morpheus D. Duval, who was formerly the R&D division. His motivation appears to be based on retaliation, which is exactly the same in the Japanese file. Therefore, we're sending out general warnings, blah blah blah. So it's the storyline is there's no real differences here. It's just all establishing the law. As you can see, even though it's a survivor game, you can collect ammo, collect key cards. Enemies will drop ammo, but sometimes it's just not worth getting into a lot of the combat. You can see the directional indicator there to tell me when the zombies are near. It does have a dodge move, but I'm honestly terrible at it. Even though I just managed to pull it off there. So with that keycard, we'll go for the electronic lock in that hallway earlier. and I can only apologise for the slow-mo. This is just a problem with the emulation. The headshots are quite satisfying. I only ever played this with a G-Con 2 once, and I was honestly not that impressed. One of the more appealing aspects of the emulation is the fact that you can map the G-Con to a mouse, which makes it a lot more playable apparently. So the zombies on board are just essentially crew members that as a result of Morpheus spreading the T-virus on board. This strain of T-virus does not create any Crimson Heads or leech monsters or lickers or anything.
$5 billion.
Yes. We have until midnight tomorrow. Retrieve the virus from the Morpheus.
Wait, you saved me earlier. You're Chinese Security Bureau, huh? Looks like we're in the same business.
Same business doesn't mean same side, Bruce McGivern.
You already know my name. That makes sense since you're blackmailing both of our crews. What's your name? If cooperation is too much to ask for on our first date, might I suggest we simply stay out of each other's way?
Feng Ling, that's my name. And I don't deal freshmen. If you really want to help, then go home.
Fasty.
So straight away we're introduced to Feng Ling, and she has been sent by the Chinese government to also try and prevent Morpheus's dastardly scheme. She was aware of Bruce being on board, as Bruce alludes to, for the fact that she already knew his name, and you'll see their relationship blossom. I sometimes see some very hurtful comments that those two are described as a low-rent Leon and Ada, which I oppose, you know, very, very much. I think I always quite like the characters here. I think they're okay. So if you can get the headshots down, the game becomes a lot easier. And say occasionally enemies do drop items. This is the first time to see medicinal herbs in the form of a tablet, which you will actually see again in Resident Evil 6. And I always like that effect. If you critical hit a zombie against a wall, you get a really nice blood splat. Also pointing out, you get the ECG, famous ECG from the series in the bottom right hand corner. I think the HUD and the presentation actually is quite nice, and it's upscaled quite well on the emulation. Sound design on this is quite impressive as well. You get, you know, the hallways feel very, you know, very long and empty. I know George Trevor of Crimson Head Elder has always likened the atmosphere in this game to The Shining, and you know, in many ways he's not wrong. The puzzles are quite linear in that you just essentially collecting key items and delivering them to other areas. But the sense of progression is quite nice. The game always shows you where you need to go, so you're never lost for long. And I'll just look at the Twitch chat and see Johnny has decided to join us for tonight. So hello again, mate. Nice to see you. Thank you for watching. The purpose of the stream is just to try and highlight the fact that Dead Aim is probably not as bad as you guys remember. If you've always felt a bit ill toward it, I know there's plenty in the fan base that have got a soft spot for this game, like we have on the podcast. So yeah, if we can just convince one person that there's slightly more to the game than meets the eye, then I've done a good job. So it's always there's plenty of little nooks and crannies. I mean, a lot of the rooms do look the same, with a few minor differences in it, but you know, it's to be expected from, you know, what is essentially a cruise ship. It starts to become a little bit more than that when we get down to the lower levels, but for the most part, you know, it is business as we know it. So this is a regular report 1162. It's just called the periodic report in the Japanese version, and this is essentially an insider who works for Morpheus and is feeding information back to an O'Neill. We never find out who O'Neill is. He just works at the HQ Intelligence Investigation Department, and all he's essentially doing here is just feeding back to Morpheus that feeding back to the base that Morpheus is an increasingly dangerous individual. So it's written fairly recently because obviously the Paris lab attack happened what would be 3 days prior to today. So this chap's come on board. He signs off as PT, not given any other name. And like I mentioned earlier, Morpheus is obsessed with beauty and he sees the world as ugly, and he recently has taken plastic surgery, which may go a little bit further than just retaining youthful looks, as we'll see later. I will eliminate the ugly things in the world and create my kingdom filled with beauty. And PT decided that he was clearly not enjoying his role, and this is what becomes of him. So rest in peace, PT. Playable teaser. So likewise, as much as there are many like adjacent and similar rooms, there's quite a few locked off. You can usually clock this game around the hour mark, but will take a bit more time. There's often a lot of trigger points, so you come and pick this herb up, do a 180 turn, and then zombies have been spawned in. If you get the critical hit down, you basically nullify a lot of the damage, difficulty of the game. We get a silenced handgun. I'm not too hot on the guns in the game. I know Bruce's is a Beretta of sorts, but I won't pretend to know what weapon type that silenced handgun is. It's nearly a jump scare. Provided I've cracked the emulation properly, we should hear some really nice save room music soon. And it's behaving. So the track you're hearing now was also created by Rise, but on the Japanese website of Heroes Never Die, it actually does have, you know, lyrics track. I'm not even sure if that track's available anymore. You can probably find it on YouTube, I imagine. So like I say, I will save just in case we have emulation problems, but you know, hopefully the game will behave for the duration we're playing it. So we're looking for a key card which will unlock further parts to the ship. Fear the zombies laid everywhere. You do get very basic items, sorry, item information if you highlight over them, but you don't get any in-depth, you can't zoom in or anything like that, so it's just literally a crew key card. There's a zombie to the right, but we'll just run straight past. We don't need to hang around any longer than necessary. Just while we're at it, I've just actually seen that in this file here, I did miss actually telling you about one of the. This is one of the first files, which not that one. One of the first files that actually has a change in the Japanese text. So here, you start to get a bit of what the Spencer reign is about. So obviously this game was written before Shinji Mikami's plan of changing essentially what happened to Umbrella post Raccoon City. So this still existed in a timeline which very much still had Umbrella around in 2002. It's kind of been like retro fitted into the series, even though it was released first. And what we basically have is now Umbrella, as a result of their assets being frozen, they sort of turn to the black market, and in later years they use ships to transport the BOWs around, as Wesker tells you in Wesker's extra report, which is on YouTube. Give it a listen, performed by DC Douglas. And what they do on these ships and on the Spencer reign is no different. The Spencer reign is used to auction some of these BOWs to people within the black market. This line here, after robbing the lab in Paris, Morpheus appears to be preparing the border cruiser to auction the items. This line is kind of alluded to in the Japanese version. It doesn't say so much, but the extra bit of line of dialogue you get, the extra bit of writing is, we need to take action against him before it becomes too late. There is a passage in the Japanese version which says if something happens it could be as difficult to handle as the disaster in Raccoon City. There's no mention of Raccoon City in this file at all. So that's one of the sort of first key changes. It's not dramatic, it doesn't really change the story so much, but it very much has Raccoon in mind, which is always nice, because as we'll see, Morpheus has a very close connected relationship to Raccoon City. But I'll let the story play out as much as it can on its own. There's no point in examining many of the guest room doors and that, because most of them are boarded, but it's always worth checking, because you do get additional items and weapons. Speedrunners will miss quite a large chunk of the game, which is a shame. But we will head toward the guest room soon. They see the game. I mean, it's a linear experience, but you do get moments like this where it tells you can go either left or right, and the structure of the game is the same. You will always have to do the sequences in the correct order, but there's a little bit of deviation. It's nothing like Survival with its multiple playthroughs and differing paths. So you do get, like I say, a lot of the doors are boarded up. Some of the zombies are fast. I made a bit of a hash of that. Some of them, as you can see, take a bit of a bashing. The way the ammunition works is, as you add more weapons to your arsenal, your ability to carry ammo like is the same, if you like. So you'll carry less handgun ammo as the game goes on, because you'll be consuming your inventory with more important ammunition. This is the last of the handguns. It is a Glock 18, I believe, but it's incorrect to reality because this is a burst fire, and I don't think a Glock 18 does. Check every stack of paper just in case, for files. In terms of the world design, you know, there's some nice details here and there. There's a lot of differing artwork on the walls, but for the most part, it's not a bad-looking PS2 game. So there's the umbrella symbol there. Spencer Rain, I don't need to introduce why the name Spencer is important for the series, but you have to bear in mind that this was released in 2003, so we'd still not actually met Spencer at this point. He'd only just really become a key figure with Code Veronica, because outside of some Japanese material, there was no actual mention of Spencer in a game until Code Veronica. Which is hard to believe given his importance with the series, but to previously get any information about him, you'd needed to have read the true story behind Biohazard and things like that. Johnny in the Twitch chat has just put up the Japanese translation for the report 1162. 1162? Yeah. So we're going to go into the kitchen because I know the shotgun's in here. We're going to see some pretty horrific slowdown, because even on the emulation it seems to emulate the slowdown just as much. Again, the detail's quite low, but everything's here. And hey, it has toilets in this game. You know, so people praising Resident Evil 2, let's have some credit where it deserves. It's quite ominous. And there's the shotgun. The object of our desires. And as soon as I pick it up. So there we go, I can't carry any more. So this is one of the more ridiculous things you've got to do with the game. You are limited to 6 ammunition items, and I'm going to have to burn through one because, like I say, you will always have the ability to pick up handgun ammo at save rooms. You're not always going to be able to replenish your shotgun rounds. There we go. Skillfully dodged. The atmosphere is pretty wonderful in this game. Actually, they do a good job. And the game teases nice, nice areas like the dining room and things. Forgive the shooting. As you can see, it either goes really well or not at all. There we go. So Morpheus has also stolen a sample of Umbrella's new viral success, TG virus, or the T and G virus, depending on which part of the world you're from. It's an experimental sample he has. It's not been long developed, and if you pay attention to the intro of the game, where it's just showing you sort of all the FMV bits put together, you actually learn it was created at Area 3B of the first floor B2F at the Paris lab. But nowhere in the game tells you that. It only tells you it. It only tells you it in that little bit of information on the intro. The slowdown is particularly bad. It looks to be worse than the PlayStation 2 version, in all honesty. Always said to retain something of themselves. So the admin report, there is nothing of note in this file in the Japanese versions. It's just literally to tell you where to get the valve handle from. That's it. There's a fair bit of backtracking in the game, it's only really prominent in this section. It's not too bad. It just sort of pads the game out longer than it needs to be, because as we discussed, the game isn't massively long anyway. Speedrunners will have this finished in 40 minutes. In the opening grenade attack, Morpheus was mortally wounded, and well, you'll see what he'll do in a moment. So we're back in the main hall with a nice bit of artwork. I can't honestly remember the name of that painting. Is it Venus or something? So we're going to the bar stroke casino. And we are given the waiter's letter. I think there's just a couple of minor changes in the waiter's letter. I think there's just more references in the Japanese version. He just asks about his family a lot more, and he does talk about the auction room, I believe. So yeah, my colleague told me that they came from various countries. He's talking about the VIPs on board, and the Japanese file here describes as, I'll read it out to you, A colleague told me VIPs from many nations have gathered here for some kind of business transaction, which again alludes to the fact that Umbrella is using ships to transport BOWs for the black market for auction. And it'll not be long before we see the auction room in question, which is nice. It's just extra detail. This is dated September 14th, 2002, so it's only 4 days before all the action in the game takes place. The only other difference is that Joseph literally just asks, "How is the family? Is mother in good spirits?" That is it. So I mean, in terms of the impact on the world, Dead Aim doesn't add all that much, but with Mikami getting rid of Umbrella, it added this interesting new dynamic to Umbrella having to operate in the shadows up until, as Umbrella Chronicles depicts, up until the moment they're ultimately taken out by Chris and Jill and Wesker seizes the Red Queen. This is one of the only games that sort of really looks at their more shady ways, and this is one of the reasons why we think it's a fascinating addition to the lore. Don't need a club symbol, club key. So even though like I say, it's an extremely linear game, but it does have some nice little themed puzzles. And we're now in the storehouse. That's referred to in the file telling us where to get the valve handle, and we're going to meet Fong Ling again and one of her new adversaries. So this is the freight crewman's diary, and it is one of the crew members. He's celebrating his 100th day aboard the Spencer Ray. And I am just, forgive me, trying to find the file. Because I am not skilled enough as Batman to retain all of this mentally. I have to actually rely on the old-fashioned pieces of paper and things like that. So just bear with me one moment while I let you read through it. In the Japanese file, this is called the Cargo Administrator's Diary. There's not a great deal of difference. All the dates are the same. The dates are actually accurate to what day it was in 2002 as well. I did check. So the only real difference in the Japanese version is here. They talk about the presentation room, which is where everything's been put up for auction. Recently, many people are going in and out of that room. The only thing that the Japanese file alludes to is the fact that these are newly arrived passengers. That is literally it. Talking about the red mark, this would be the Biohazard symbol. And that's that. And there is the valve handle. Some cutscenes are unfortunately done using the in-game engine, and they look like this.
Should have left by now. Somewhere in America, there's a kitten stuck in a tree, desperately needing your help. Oh well, thanks for the present.
Funny girl. Now give me a hand. Fong Ling!
And now we play as Fong Ling. As you'll see, the dialogue differs quite wildly in places. The literal script tends to be a lot less wisecracking and a bit more straight to the point. The large hand that we saw attack Bruce is this game's tyrant, and it is TO91, and it's the first creature in the series that we see that's been tested on with the TG virus. It's considered a failure because the reason why they're creating the TG virus is to create a virus. It's ridiculous. That utilizes, you know, the hope is that they can create a virus which will give its host electromagnetic properties for protection. I'm in a bit of a mess here. TO91 is considered a failure, and the reason it's called the Tyrant's called TO91 is because it's been tested with the version 091 version of the TG virus. It's considered a failure because the Tyrant shows no electromagnetic properties. It's slow motion is really bad. The sections you play as Fongling are quite short. She's armed straight away with this machine gun, assault rifle that looks like a calico of sorts, but I've probably got that wrong. And I won't pretend to know weapons. And we're about to get reintroduced to classic BOW.
Beauty and brains.
And you are just brawn.
Morpheus here then, seriously injured.
You will not destroy this for me.
And here we have the Hunter Elites. These versions in particular, as a file will tell us later, have been modified for auction. They've got more sort of hooked appendages. They're just standard T-virus mutations. Nothing overly exceptional with them. Their agility is really high, as you'll see. No doubt make a complete hash up of this battle. Best to save things like the shotgun. A pretty cool death animation. What can we say really? They're slightly more agile. They've got a neat little sidestep move. They're hunters. We'll get a file shortly, but there's not really much more to them. They've just been modified for auction.
Not again.
And now we will witness Morpheus using the TG virus.
Never try.
And straight away, he seems to bond with it in a way that gives him the electromagnetic properties. this section too, or at least yet. This game really marked the first of, you know, many Biohazard games which like to take place on, you know, boats and cruise ships. Alert indicator didn't even go off. Bruce is quite formidable. I've taken a couple of bites now and he's still on fine. And I've just wasted all those bullets. We'll just carry on. Here we go, lower decks. And here we have it, the presentation room. So if you can imagine, at some point on these kind of ships that are owned by Umbrella, plenty of VIPs and executives from the black market will come and sit in these seats. The presentation will be made in these capsules of the BOWs. There's even a little podium for a speaker to announce them, screens, the old Umbrella logo as we know it. You know, you can almost think that, you know, this is the beginnings of how the world gets a hand of a lot of these viruses, and this is what starts really. This is why Dead Aim's important to a lot of us. This is what, in many ways, alludes to the black market and how bioterrorism begins around the world. It all started here, folks. Resident Evil Dead Aim, a game you all dismissed. Umbrella podium and the diary. So here we have the research report. Again, bear with me. So this is the first sign of our information, that we're given about the Hunter Elites. The special elite version has been modified for presentation. It's faster and more powerful than a standard Hunter. I mean, it also has some various visual modifications, but other than that, it is the same things. We'll ignore the rather strange typo. That looks like it says Tyrant or Titant. It is in fact a standard Tyrant, believe it or not. This sample was created with a newly developed virus. This is the first information we're given about the TG virus. It attacks objects with its huge arms, so it's different from a standard Tyrant. It doesn't have claws, it has weird sort of tentacle fingers, which makes it look wholly ridiculous. This is different from other Tyrants in that its organ, the always as ever exposed heart, which is one of the flaws of the Tyrant program, is actually located on its back behind its neck now. It is classed as a failure because it did not blend with the TO91 properly, the TG091, and so it's kind of classed as a failure. And even though they're not pursuing the Tyrant program in this case with this particular Tyrant, they have still brought it for auction. What's interesting here is that even the Japanese version of this file mentions the T and the G virus being fused to create electrical properties. There was a Japanese site which had some additional information for Heroes Never Die years ago, and when you actually literally translated that, I know a couple of the guys on Project Umbrella that did, I believe it was Welsh, this is all written in the Theorists Never Die report as well. It alludes to the fact that the T virus, it's not the actual T virus as we knew it in the series, it's the T virus antibody. So it's the T virus antibody and the G virus that creates the TG virus. And as I actually look, it is mentioned in the Japanese file. So we've used the G virus and its antibody, the T virus, at a gene level and succeeded in adding electrical properties. That's actually quite an important thing to note, because not only does it imply that it's not the main strain, not a main strain T virus, it also leads to an interesting question as to what happens to Morpheus, which we're about to see. And what happens to Morpheus is kind of extraordinary if you're not aware. So let's just take a look. So we take the crowbar for opening the cases in the storeroom we've just seen, and as we leave, yeah, that was heels.
Scared little rats with an ugly, useless gun.
Morpheus?
As I said, useless.
So there we have it. It's an awful slowdown, but Morpheus has undergone, or whether he always was, but the guy has had a sex change. Could this be the plastic surgery that was alluded to? If you look at his posture and his appearance in the intro, it does imply there are breasts, which seems strange to talk about, but certainly it's a strange mutation. It's a bit bonkers, even for Biohazard. It's quite outlandish. I'm just literally opening all these boxes because one of them has an item in it, and I can't honestly remember which one or whether it changes each time. Morpheus is probably going to do some damage to me here. Slow motion is really bad. This is actually running worse than the PlayStation 2 original, unfortunately. So sorry about that, guys. It was always going to be the last one I looked. Maybe it's designed to be. Yes. So this is actually a bit of a stalker section in the game. I can only apologise for the slow motion, guys.
What? I'll explain later. Open this door from the inside.
Morpheus, despite the fact that Morpheus is now essentially a tyrant, Bruce holds his own quite well on the other side of the door here. This is this performance, pure agony. The game does not run like this on the PlayStation 4, you'd be pleased to know. Sorry, PlayStation 2. It does actually run quite well. It does have some moments of slowdown in it, but nothing to this extent. This is quite poor. It's like running through treacle. What have I forgotten to do? There we go.
How many times are you expecting me to save you, mister?
Come on. What are friends for? I'm just trying to help you build up your confidence.
Don't qua.
Don't.
Shh.
I think he's given up. Wait. Before you said Donghua, what does that mean?
It means you are cool.
So, Morpheus then. Why a tyrant? Why a female tyrant? And how did that happen if it's the T antibody and not the actual T virus? That's a really good question, and I don't think anyone will ever truly be able to answer that with a definitive. Unfortunately. Especially when you consider that only 1 in 10 million people become a tyrant. It's not even assuming that Morpheus would be compatible. So it's just generally one of the sort of more prevalent theories is that they've managed to carry on working on the G virus. Obviously, the Paris branch is, I believe, Christine Henry's branch. She's the one who dispatched Hunk to collect the G virus from Raccoon City. Now, if this is 2002 and they've had it for some time, it's not too far to assume they've been carried on working on it. And you know, a tyrant isn't necessarily, as files, translations in that today have shown, tyrant doesn't necessarily always refer to T-virus beings. T doesn't necessarily stand for tyrant, depending on which files you've read, which translations you've read. So as a result, what's happened to Morpheus there might not be a T-virus mutation, it might just be an end product. You might not need the 1 in 10 million compatibility with this version of the TG virus, and because he stole it, it's a sample, because he stole it from the lab, it might have been the only one, and it might be a little bit of a miracle in itself. So it's a bit loose, I know. We just have to kind of accept it. Of course, now I forget you can throw away handgun bullets and take the shotgun rounds, which is always recommended. Now we've checked out all the crew members, dorms. I actually forgot they do that. Look at that, glorious. Going back to the monitor room, the presentation room with a crowbar for some reason. It's amazing when you don't play one of these games for quite some time, how rusty it kind of makes you. Obviously Fongling using the terminal has unlocked all of these door locks. We get treated to yet another save room. I love this save room music. I put on Twitter the other day that if you're one of these people on YouTube who've done a compilation of save room themes and you don't include the Dead Aim one, then please rethink your list. It's the recreation room key, and it is a club key. 2 fans of Resident Evil 2. So this just shows where this is the exact point where Morpheus used the TG virus, or T and G virus. And we have the dismissal note. This is one of the more important files. This is a file back in the day. If you're a lore fan, even back then, this was one. It was kind of wonderful. So upon investigation, we have concluded that you are responsible for the incident in Raccoon City on May 11th, 1998. Now, anyone who knows their lore will know Morpheus wasn't responsible because he's not Dr. James Marcus. What we're seeing here is Umbrella using Morpheus as a scapegoat. Now, El Bastardo's Guide Theories Never Die goes into this a lot more. It's well worth a look. There's all sorts of various theories and reasons as to why he becomes the scapegoat, what the reasons behind that were, indeed what parts of the company he controlled. It's generally assumed that he controls what's been named by the fans as the Benthic Island. Benthic literally means, I think, facility under the water or something, but it's been adopted to the island's name since it's never actually been given one. A non-disclosure agreement will remain in effect, final paycheck, dismissal procedure, all of that's pretty much the same in the Japanese file. They just go into a little bit more detail, and I'll read it out to you. It is as a result of, so it's based on this page here. As a result of the investigation, gross negligence in the development department under your supervision was found to be associated with the accident that occurred in Raccoon City on May 11th. As the person in charge of the same department, that's something else you don't really get. So Morpheus was in charge of the R&D division, and they basically let him take the fall. He was released of his duty on August 20th, 1998. So Morpheus spends over 4 years concocting this plan, and as we see when we get onto the island, we'll see what he's been up to, and he's certainly not been resting. So I'll just save one more time. We'll move on. We've nearly completed the Spencer Rain section. Like I say, this game is not massive. We'd be nearly finishing it by now if I'd been speedrunning it. Always like that little audio cue. So we know we've got the club key, so we need to go back to the bar, which we're right near. The game structure is quite generous. It doesn't have you running around without no idea what to do very often. You always tend to be near where you need to be. We are about to reach the captain's room. Or rather, not that way. This is a lovely detailed room, this. I always find it interesting that the captain gets like a luxurious cabin, and the worst bathroom. It just looks. It's not very luxury, is it? It's hardly a Queen at Zenobia style, but the cabin's lovely. This is running, I think 4 times standard resolution, but even then it can't pick out any real details in the textures. They are generally very low quality, unfortunately. Something you can examine, but there is a ship's log. Now, this is one of the more dramatically different files which I have in front of me. So, September 20th, 2002, it'll be 4 months tomorrow since the Spencer Rain left port. I'm proud to have a safe voyage so far. The representative from Umbrella spoke words of appreciation. A line missing here is the fact that the captain just goes on to say that the destination is long, but he will gather the sailors tomorrow and get drunk with wine in celebration. This is probably the most hacked up single page in the entire game. So as you can see in the Western file here, it just simply says something is strange, although the crew has reported nothing special. I'm concerned that the ones may be breaking free. Let me read out this page in the Japanese version and see what you think. Something is strange. I hear sounds in spite of it being the middle of the night. Although the sailors report there doesn't seem to be any abnormalities in particular, have those things that the researchers of the Umbrella headquarters brought escaped? I've decided to carry my large caliber magnum just in case. So not only does it it obviously confirms the Umbrella cargo on board, this already implies that things are getting a little bit untoward on the vessel. We know that Morpheus stole the samples on the 18th, and he boarded on the 20th. So, in a sense, I just need to confirm I've got that right. I think I'm tripping over myself a bit there. Now, he boarded the Spencer Raid on the 20th, so at this point, his people are already on board, probably starting their sabotage. which is interesting, and the Japanese file goes into that a lot more detail. He also alludes on this same page in the Japanese file that it's rare that the VIPs gather together. One can never be too careful. Again, all this is missing. And September 22nd. So this isn't long before now, to be honest. The passengers and the crew are all dead. All I can do is accept what's happening on my ship as my destiny. The Japanese file just says the armed group still occupies the interior of the ship, so it already confirms that the ship's been lost to Morpheus's men, and it's essentially he writes this moments before Bruce and Fongling arrive. And here he is. Here's the captain. He's a tough cookie. And I will be defeated by slow motion. The Desert Eagle. And still he lives. And we will leave him to his doom.
That alarm can't be any good. Any idea what it's for?
Look!
Benthic Island.
No!
We gotta get out of here.
Go!
We'll just literally follow her out the door, where she has been attacked by the TO-91. Not the most fearsome looking tyrant in the game, but in the series, but it's still formidable nonetheless. I'm probably going to do it horribly.
I'll distract the monster while you run after Morpheus.
Got it.
Alright, monster. It's payback time.
It does look slightly daft with its elongated fingers. And it's really more about getting the dodging right, which I do kind of suck at. I really applaud the people who can do this with the G-Cons. also not missing is recommended. I do love the blood effects in this game. I think that they're excellent. This tyrant is notoriously weak in that now we've essentially burst its heart, it doesn't obviously exhibit any limiters, so it dies. It's probably the least impressive tyrant in the series. Farewell, Spencer Rain. We get one of my personal favourite sequences in the series. I just wish we'd seen, you know, with more of a budget, we'd have seen more of the island, and I'd love to have explored this landscape. I think the atmosphere is superb. I'll let the game speak for itself.
Morpheus.
It's worth pointing out that at this point in the story, the Chinese government now think Fongling has failed in a mission with the destruction of the boat, and they are now going to meet Morpheus with his demands and pay him the 5 billion. Benthic Island was generally believed to be the place that Morpheus was running during his time in Umbrella, and he has a facility deep beneath the island that, despite his dismissal of the company, was carried on working and completed, as we will see. Neptune always had a theory, which is nice, it's in the Theories Never Die, that the bow outbreak on this island was deliberate and was used as essentially as a BOW zoo in the purposes of testing all the different BOWs that we'll see. Going back to Morpheus's tyrant mutation, it's just worth reminding ourselves that in Wesker's report 2, theorises that the host mindset appears to influence the evolution of the virus. That could also explain why Morpheus adopts a more female appearance post-infection in terms of how he truly sees himself. So the story goes way back to 1997. This is pre-outbreak, pre-Raccoon City outbreak. This is the operator's notebook. I'll just grab. 1 month has passed since I was dispatched here. We're standard at a sloppy supervision of this umbrella waste disposal facility. It's not surprising this accident happened. So, implying that way back in June 24th, 1997, over a year in fact before the Raccoon City incident, there was an outbreak on Benthic. I can't move, my body won't move, yet I can still use a pen. This is the Biological Report 1. Survey report on the changes to POWs which are considered factors undisposed of in this facility. Not many changes here, but we get introduced to the first of the BOWs we will run into, the torpedo kids, which are very daft. And the only aquatic creatures are pretty rapidly. The only difference in the Japanese version is that it just says they swim autonomously and have a habit of coming together regardless of moving things. That's literally the only real difference in this report. I named them torpedo kids since they swim like torpedoes. So the underground sections, the sort of sewer system of Benthic is quite bland visually. It's a bit of a letdown after the sort of the nicely detailed spent terrain. It is just a series of corridors and some adversaries in the water. I don't tend to bother fighting anything here. There's our first glimpse of a torpedo kid, and you can do these sections with not a lot of combat. It's just more about pacing yourself. And plotting your route first. Terrible shooting. Really doesn't like torpedo kid mother. I won't even bother killing it because it's just honestly, even though the pistol ammo is plentiful, there's no real point. Naked zombies, always a pleasure to see. Nice little bit of detail because you can imply that given their high state of decomposition, these are people from way back in 1997. Just plotting the route out. Got to be careful because you can die very quickly in this section.
They're gonna launch missiles carrying the T-virus at major cities across the United States. The Chinese are no longer in this with us. They've agreed to pay the $5 billion.
But that would make Fong Ling's presence obsolete.
Fong Ling? Bruce, have you had contact with Fong Ling?
Yes, if China were to choose to cooperate with Morpheus.
In any case, the United States will not be threatened, and we do not negotiate with terrorists. The safety of our nation is in your hands. Good luck.
Fong Ling.
And this is our first look at Pluto, or codename Alpha. So at this point, the Chinese government agreeing to pay them, to pay Morpheus, it's generally regarded that they now realise she's alive, so they have to save face. This is what leads to this small section of the game, which you're about to see in a moment, where they try and kill her using some rather outlandish technology. Do some easy critical hits here. This section of the game is fairly straightforward and unfortunately not all that interesting. As you can tell, it is just a series of very similar looking corridors. And a lot of enemies that don't really do you much trouble. Just a zombie. and I've made a fatal error. It's actually a later bit I want to go to. It's unlucky. So straight away we've lost our map. Nothing of interest about that. And this is the Chinese orbital laser.
What are you doing?
Bruce there using gentle methods to remove the tracking chip that Fongling has.
The government seems to care an awful lot about where you are. Not even their best agent, which makes you expendable. What are you going to do?
I'll continue my mission. Morpheus will live up to his end of the deal, even if we pay. But the people of China are still in danger. Oh, and since you saved me this time, I think I should say thanks.
Don't mention it. I'm a Dongguan after all.
I really like the music to this game. It's very simple but really enjoyable. And now we're back as Bruce. I've got a feeling, I can't remember, but I've got a feeling I've missed the grenade launcher. Looking at that, I think I probably have. So this is Biological Report 2, and this is discussing the glimmers. These are generally described as a subspecies of hunter. They are a lot smaller, they've got glowing red eyes, and again there's not much more to them than that. I'm just gonna find for definite that there's nothing else untoward. But I just generally think that, yeah, it is more or less the same. both versions of the file. Yep. So nothing massively different in the Japanese version. It's just written slightly differently. And with that, we shall move on. I don't think they utilised the Glimmer as well as they could do. It's just a standard T-virus mutation. It has glowing red eyes. I can't really honestly see how it derives from a hunter. Although you could argue it's very similar to the Lurker in Zero. And we have our first report on Pluto, or Alpha. And what they do to him is pretty horrendous, actually. So you are given a rather graphic account of what they do to him. So they hammer a metal rod into his frontal lobe to alleviate some of the pain. This was done for humanitarian reasons, of course. The Japanese version mentions how he's a death row inmate, which is something that again is not mentioned in the English file. All we're literally given is that he's a convict. He's a condemned criminal, should I say. Removal of the eyeballs. Pluto has his vision removed, and as a result, as this file explains, his hearing gets he's like the BOW equivalent of Daredevil. It recognises precisely where a sound originates and his distance from that sound. Can you guess what kind of mechanic they're going to use in its boss fight? Experiment suspended. What's humorous about this is that Pluto is a BOW from 1996, and he's been wandering the halls of this facility ever since, even though the facility still runs, as we know from the other file, well into 1997. They sound pretty nonchalant about it here. They're not really that bothered. Just that they should use extreme care. Even without its vision, the subject is quite dangerous. We take the medicinal spray. It's pretty heartbreaking that I've missed the grenade launcher, I'm pretty sure. It's in the sewer tunnels. For this section, it's just about like looking at the map, working out the path to the lift. One path will always be locked. There's the glimmers there. They pose next to no danger at all, so it's just as easy to run past them. And again on this floor, we just do the same. You see, it's a fairly linear path. Certain doors are unlocked. But they can attack them. Timmy, you tell me how that's a subspecies of hunter. Now, you know, in the theories never die, they discuss the fact that these zombies are on fire, and as a result of the fire, it must be fairly recent. They come to the conclusion that these people here must be Morpheus's men. Something untoward has befallen them. You have to be careful in this section. They can swarm you quite quite well. The elevator room is where we're going to have our battle royale with Pluto. Here we go. If you guys will just bear with me 1 second, please, I will be back in 1 moment. Silenced handgun is what you need here. I've never honestly tried this fight without silenced pistol, but I can't imagine it's a whole lot of fun. It's actually a pretty easy, I want to say easy fight if you're patient. And I've completely forgotten the keycard, of course. That's how memory can mess you up. Completely forgot about that, so sorry guys. The worst thing about this is I can't even remember where the keycard is. Another interesting fact that the Japanese Heroes Never Die site mentions is that Pluto killed 5 people during his escape. Again, that is not mentioned in any file in the game. I'm not even sure. I can't honestly even remember if there was a dead aim site. I don't even know if you can still access the Heroes Never Die site on a Wayback Machine, but that would be interesting if you could. Just forgive me for a few seconds, guys, while I try and find this key card. Just take a moment to plug a couple of things. So we managed to get Wesker's report, Wesker's extra report on the Project Umbrella YouTube, the Project Umbrella podcast YouTube page. We've just got it up for the moment, just to get it up there so people can see it. It is something we're hopefully going to look at that. That's so annoying. It's something that we're going to hopefully, thank you Johnny, just telling me where it is. It's something we're hopefully going to visualise, going to make a little bit of like an official Wesker's report with it. It's just that's just going to take a little bit of time to do, so bear with us on that one. And Batman's carrying on with his Revelations playthrough, which is, if you've watched the most recent one, explores a lot of the conspiracy with Veltro being revived already. And I'm not just saying this as as someone who's affiliated with him. Already I'm getting a better grasp of how the story to that game works. Give all this health I'm going to burn just trying to do this. transport orders are. I don't even think Project Umbrella even did a translation of this. It is pretty much as is, and it's just talking about the fact that the biosphere has been built, and that it's deep beneath the sea. This will be where Morpheus will launch his missiles from, and it's just basically telling you how to get down there. I think they'd let you open that door, don't you? Armed with the key, Pluto shall make his appearance. He's fast for the size of him. Here we go. Now, provided you stay in a stealth position, which you always are when you're aiming, you can just keep unleashing damage to him. You've just got to be, you know when you've got a hit because you get the big blood splash. Really don't alert this guy because it's very hard to get rid of. You know, as set pieces go, this is actually one of the better ones. Pluto is again a T-virus abnormality. He gained all this weight as a result of the researchers using steroids on him, and it caused him to gain an incredible amount of weight. You know when you're nearly there as well, because his brain will disgustingly hang from his head. I'll arguably let him get a bit too close here. seconds left, and then we're going to have to... There we go. Right, so I'm letting him get too close. I know, thankfully there is some handgun ammo around here. And there we go. Not too bad a fight, and that went pretty well. So now we go to the underwater facility.
The missiles are below this room. We don't have much time. Let's go. Morpheus.
We'll say as well that I really, you don't get it in these sequences made with the in-game engine, but I really do love the FMVs in this game. I think the direction is actually quite stylish and quite impressive. I love the use of slow motion, and I'm not usually a person who loves slow motion in a lot of movie making or direction, but I think it's done quite well in this game, particularly for a low budget title as well. So here we go then. The final section is Fongling, and it's relatively short. She gets a nice little bandage on her arm now, where Bruce extracted the chip. Just going to enable the power. Ignore you. So see, we're at 2 hours already. Like I say, you can finish this game in about 45 minutes, so it just goes to show how steady we've been taking it. Bruce is the most heroic man alive to survive an elevator crash of that magnitude.
Fongling.
yeah, the moral of that story is just use a shotgun. Okay, that's always annoying. It's the map. That's the architect's memo. And again, there's not really anything massively different in this one. It's been quite a while since the undersea laboratory was scrapped by headquarters. So this probably in the wake of him being fired from Umbrella. This Western file doesn't allude to that. It just states that it was built and completed without HQ being aware of it. Interestingly, the Japanese file doesn't refer to it as the raccoon incident. They just call it. I'm concerned how this base will be treated since the so-called biohazard. They're probably referring to the biohazard of '97 and not the raccoon incident. So now we've got a map. It's quite linear, the lab, but honestly I'm just pleased it exists. It's not a terribly long section, so we really are in the end game now. So this is another one of the really butchered files. So we get the Howlbird here, which is the large insect-like creature we're going to see soon. This is the only information you get in the Western file. A being that has an external skeleton of a horseshoe crab with a square cockroach. The Japanese file has an additional page, and all it says is the mother, known as the Queen, does not have offensive or flying capabilities. It continuously produces thousands of small animals known as sentries. So there you go. A little bit of additional lore. Probably just an error as to why that page was left out. Because there's nothing in there as to why they wouldn't choose to include it. It's tricky when they dodge like that. There we go.
Because thou hast obeyed my voice.
Because thou hast obeyed my voice.
Because thou hast obeyed my voice.
So we need to wait till we get the tape recorder and then come back here. orders from Morpheus. Just called written orders from Morpheus in the Japanese version. Again, it's written quite differently, but the actual details you get are more or less the same. And this is basically just telling you about the email puzzle anyway. He mentions about beginning the plan, so obviously this is the beginning of his revenge against Umbrella. And it's not where you get the tape recorder from. Interesting. A nice little room there that you explore. Just adds to the world building really, and you'll see the pod later. And this is where we'll get the tape recorder. Really, when you think about that, you know, this was just designed to be, you know, a Survivor sequel, a light gun shooter for all intents and purposes. I think it's pretty decent. That's unfortunate. I can't remember if there is any great reason for coming this way. We'll replenish and save. Pretty impressed that although the emulation has been running much slower than the game usually does, we haven't actually had any crashes yet, which is welcome.
Because thou hast obeyed my voice. Because thou hast obeyed my voice.
So with that recorded, we can now go to the voice recorder, hopefully not get mullered by hunters. This takes us into the lab proper. Now, usually I use the grenade launcher against the halberd, and I don't have it this time.
Hast obeyed my voice.
Oh, do you get a calico? Or a machine gun again? And probably that looks more like a G36. Hazmat zombie. And Johnny's just told me that, and confirmed in the Twitch chat, that I have indeed missed the grenade launcher. It wasn't the sewer passage. Hey! This is just a real pain. And we'll go and kill the halberd now. sturdy shutter box your way. This boss is quite pathetic. Doesn't really do much. It just tends to move around the room. And that's it. Run around while the animation and that finishes. Then once you go through this door, that's the last of the Howlbird. With them gone, I will collect the assault rifle rounds. You'll need that for the final section with Morpheus. Got one bullet left. So here we go. If there was any fruits of the linear launcher's labour, it is the charged particle rifle. There's no real differences in the Japanese file. Interestingly, the name of the charged particle rifle, as you can see in the background, is the T-Buster prototype. Looks to be prototype 4 potentially. It's not really very clear in the background. T-Buster. Charged particle rifle was developed to cope with any biohazards caused by the T-virus. The only change in the Japanese version that they do change it's not TG, it's T plus G. But again, it's not really anything to worry about. Some cool details here, but we want that thing. In fact, no, it's here. So the charged particle rifle gives you a very nice set piece style battle with Morpheus, and I knew it was going to cause some slowdown. I love this gun. Again, we're teased with things like the analyze room, but the game sadly does not let us explore it. So the principle of the charged particle rifle is that if accelerated particles hit what is essentially it causes destruction on a molecular level. It never takes place again. It never appears again in the series. There's a nice theory on the Theories Never Die file article on the website that Morpheus has brought this with him on the Spencer raid. But that's something you'll need to read into, because I honestly can't remember all the little theories about that. We may as well just go straight on then. It's unbelievable. There's nothing else of note in here. We will then go straight on to Morpheus. Thoughts on my kingdom. The symbol of power is in Africa. The Japanese file, the symbol of power is beneath the earth in Africa. Stairway to the Sun, maybe? It was written long before RE5, but do you see how later games can enhance earlier ones? I'm not saying in any way that this is a connection to the progenitor flower in 5, but it could be. And it can be up to you to decide whether you want it to be that or not. The symbol of knowledge is here in the biosphere, the symbol of beauty is mine, and beauty controls everything, and I shall dominate it. Establishing a kingdom where beauty has absolute authority is the dream which arms me to become reality. I was disappointed by Umbrella's portrayal, but that's fine, I'll just use them in return, if I secure enough funds. Soon, China will surrender, and the United States will follow suit. After that, I will merely arrange abundant funds, the building of a nation in the Africa hinterland will come to fruition. There's a little bit more there, and a potential Stairway to the Sun reference, albeit a very, very retroactive reference that didn't obviously happen when this game was written. So Fongling was right, even though China have agreed to pay, she's going to she's going to launch them anyway.
I'll get you out of there.
It's not even going to let me carry the Calico bullets. This is interesting. G36 bullets. I don't even know what machine. I'll say assault rifle bullets. I don't know why I keep trying to pretend to know.
Bruce. Shame on you, Bruce. A good agent would never risk his mission to save a woman. That's going to be a very costly mistake.
Keep dreaming.
No, that's nice. This slow-mo is really going to get me killed here, because I can't actually dodge. And I am actually stun locked. There we go. That was fortunate. Just put some space in between and this fight is really fun on the PlayStation 2. It's a bit of a short horror show here. Sorry, guys. Believe it or not, this is actually a really fun fight. Well, there we go. Thank God that's over.
Fong Ling!
Why did you save me? Your first priority should have been to disarm the missiles.
A Donghua never abandons a woman. Damn it! Let's go! It's too complicated. We'll never make it to the missile silo in time.
I'll just watch on this monitor and navigate you through.
Cute. Alright, let's do it.
And the G virus doing its work here to mutate him into something truly grotesque. Now, I'll tell you, don't even let me use that. I am horrible at this section. I really, really struggle, so I anticipate to die a couple of times. Bruce has got the right idea there. Just go. So even trying to dodge that. I know that way won't work, probably, but I want to say it's just in case. This is the first of the two Morpheus battles. It doesn't matter how you repel him in this section, you've just got... No, I've got to look at this slow motion. You've just got to try and repel him as best you can. And the slow motion is going to make this easy, but it almost feels like I'm cheating now. No point using any of your good weapons there, because the damage you do is not going to matter. It's really quite frustrating because, as Sonny Bauer confirmed last night, because he helped me test out a couple of things on the emulation. I just did a test stream, and got the game running really well. And today, I don't know what's wrong with it. It's been a pain to emulate altogether, to be honest. It's got a lot of problems with the emulation. There's a lot of fixes you've got to use to get it working properly. I wish I had a way to stream off the PlayStation 2 original. Or here's a thought: Sony could actually give us some decent backwards compat stuff. Right then, finale. Unleash the Magnum. This is what you've saved all those bullets for. Let's go. Watch me suck at this game. One miss. There we go. Good God.
Sorry, but my dance card is full.
So now the T-virus, the TG virus, is obviously going out of control, and as we know, the G virus, you know, you just gain mass, and for whatever reason, causes this massive electromagnetic explosion, which for some reason manages to detonate the missiles as well, blowing up the entire island, but not spreading any T-virus. Bye bye Benthic. And now we get a lovely rendition of Rise again. Gunshot. And even though the game says our heroes never die, they have here. Or have them. So just to give you a little bit more information, Fongling, this is from the Heroes Never Die website that was translated. Fongling's parents died shortly after her birth, leaving herself and her brother as orphans. She was raised from a young age to be an intelligent agent, and when she became suspicious of her brother's potential counter-revolutionary role as a pro-democracy activist, she was ordered to arrest him, and she did do, and he was executed immediately after by the state. Fongling became one of the most ruthless but effective spies in the Chinese government. Just to give you a little bit more. What's happening now? So I don't know where they found the sub from, the little escape pod. I don't know how they had the time to get in it. we don't ask those kind of questions in this James Bond style ending.
Looks like we accomplished our mission. Fangling, come with me to America. There's nothing left for you in China.
No, I'm going home. I belong to China.
Tonghua, I'm truly an idiot after all.
You know what it really means?
I've been in your country once.
That was not in your dossier.
So there we have it, guys. Sorry it was a bit slow and clunky in places. It's really hard to try and retain all the lore and play a game at the same time and sort of try and refer to various files, so it wasn't quite as streamlined as hoped. It was the first sort of real attempt at doing a lore commentary, so bear with sort of amateur aspects of it, and I hope it was still enjoyable nonetheless. If I've managed to convince one person who watches this that they may rethink the importance of Dead Aim, especially with, you know, the impact it seems to have on the story, particularly with the, you know, revised story that happened after Mikami's rewrite of Resident Evil 4 and writing Umbrella off from within the intro of the finished game. This existed in a timeline where Umbrella was still very much prominent in 2002, and obviously with the Mikami revision, we have to try and adapt Dead Aim to make it work, and I think it's important we do, because the game is truly excellent. Even now, I've not played it at my best. It's taken me a long time, nearly 2.5 hours. I've still enjoyed every minute of it, and I've loved talking about it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did. Sorry if I rambled in places. It was a bit slow, and let's just look at the grade. I'm predicting an E. An A. What the hell? How can a stream be 2.5 hours and it be 1 hour 12 in game? That's just ridiculous. It just goes to show how much slower the emulation was playing the game there. When you finish the game, you get this Morpheus, upside down Morpheus head title screen, and that's where we'll conclude. So thank you very much, guys. That was my first attempt at a lore video, because like I said, with Resident Evil 4 ones, there's not so much you can talk about that game in terms of story, really. So this was the first one that I tried to expand on a little bit more, tried to bring to the attention some of the stuff you might not know about the Japanese files. So like I say, I hope you enjoyed it, and let's see what we'll do next. I haven't really thought about it, but watch this space. Keep your eye on the YouTube page, the Twitter account, the Facebook page. Give us all a like on there if you will, and we'll see what the future brings. Thank you very much, and see you guys soon.